All right. Good morning, everybody. Great to have everybody here in our webinar that is now happens probably every semester. This is kind of international collaboration of several organizations. This webinar is focused obviously on experiential learning, practical examples, and lessons learned. And we really hope that these different perspectives and examples from all over the world help people to generate new ideas and really kind of see some benefits and challenges, right, of experiential learning. We have this session was organized by multiple organizations, while Global Relevance Committee from TALS is organizing kind of party. We are very heavily supported by these organizations that our panelists represent. So we have ANZALS, Canadian Association for Leisure Studies Association, the Academy of Leisure Sciences, and the World Leisure Organization. All are supporting organizations for this webinar. This webinar, as you know, will be recorded, and information about the recording will be shared both on the link that you see in your chat, and also I believe there is a message that's going to be sent after webinar with the link. If you do have any other questions, please follow up with myself, Mona, or anybody really from Global Relevance Committee or our speakers. So we have a great pleasure to have a really large panel today of representatives from multiple, again, organizations. My name is Irina Sharyevska. I am currently in Clemson University, and I represent the Academy of Leisure Sciences. Great big thanks to our committee who organizes this initiative. So TALS Global Relevance, represented by several people who are just crucial part of this process. So our presenters today, panelists today, is Dr. Hazel Maxwell. She's Director of Academic Programs, Health Physical Education and Sport Development, and Senior Lecturer in Sport Development, Leisure and Recreation at Western Sydney University, and representing ANZALS. Our next presenter is Dr. Stephen Hanley, Senior Lecturer, Department of Applied Human Sciences, Concordia University, representing CALS, and his colleague, Associate Professor, Department of Applied Health Human Sciences, Concordia Universities, representing CALS, Dr. Sean Wilkson. We also have representing LSA, Dr. Aileen O'Connor, Associate Professor, School of Human Kinetics, University Ottawa. And last but not the least, our own Dr. Mona Murray is Associate Professor, Department of Tourism, Event and Sports Management, Indiana University, Indianapolis, representing TALS. So we have several questions, and we really that we sent our panelists, and we really hope that our panelists will be kind of engaged and participating in the discussion through the chat. So please feel free to post your questions there. I am going to stop sharing these slides so that we can have the speakers' faces kind of readily available. So in the same order, we're going to go, we're going to start with Hazel. The first question is, please briefly describe your experiential learning offering, and, in just a couple of minutes, and share 3 reasons for why you think it's been successful. So Hazel, would you like to take us, start us with your example, please?
Thank you, and good morning or good evening or good day. Yeah, it's great to be here. And I want to talk today about an inquiry-based research project that I run each semester at the University of Western Sydney in Australia. So students are asked as potential health, physical education teachers or sport development practitioners or sport managers to tackle a novel applied project, and it's a research project. So for example, they might look at a real world problem such as lack of representation of culturally and linguistically diverse women um, either on the beaches or in swimming or at local gyms, for example, or it could be what strategies could they use when teaching physical education um, with students with autism. So by doing these projects, this is just a couple of examples, they will learn to communicate effectively and creatively in various professional settings, such as job interviews, funding applications, and future community settings. So this learning experience requires students at the end of semester, which is after 15 weeks, to creatively present what they have discovered and learned from completing an inquiry-based research project. The goal is for students to demonstrate that they have the capacity to lead a self-directed project, that they can collate interesting and informative data and share what they've learned in a creative and novel way. So this involves a 3-minute video pitch at the beginning where they pitch their idea, a written component or executive summary, and a final in-person creative presentation. So students need to keep a reflective project diary as they go, which details the process for themselves. So the diary should include entries from at least once per week, but more frequent entries are encouraged as this will help students to refine and to formalize their ideas. And it also demonstrates ongoing reflection. So finally, students need to consider what they've learned from the inquiry project and therefore what new knowledge they acquire. They need to describe how their feelings may influence or have application in the future work-life settings. And 3 reasons that it's been successful. So these projects, I believe, are successful. Firstly, because students can develop a project based on a real world problem of interest, and that's really critical. So it's a problem that they would have observed over the 3 years of their degree in physical education, sport, or physical activity. And this problem can be tackled through the skills and abilities that they have developed and learned over the 3 years of research, particularly. So, secondly, the students are encouraged to use creative and unique ways to present their projects to the class. And they're encouraged to use methods such as it could be theatre, it could be rap, it might be a poem, it could be a video, it could be an infographic. So to try and use something a bit more creative and innovative, that's the second one. And then the third one, I think, is very important. It's working with the students individually and in small groups. So they get the choice to do the applied inquiry-based project, either individually on a topic that they are passionate about or within a group. And I think that one of the keys to this is working with them individually in small groups over the first 4 weeks to develop the short 3-minute pitch of their research problem, but particularly discussing in depth their research problem. And that also leads to the main challenge, but I'll wait and do that a little bit later. So thank you, and I hope I didn't go too fast.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I love the creative piece for sure. I am
Mhm.
curious to hear more whether student actually took you up on that and did rap or deliver something super creative that you found to be really impressive. So we'll get to that more later, I guess. Stephen and Sean, are you presenting together since you
No,
worked on this?
we'll do one at a time, but
Okay,
he'll
sounds great.
fill in when I forget something.
Perfect.
Hello from Montreal, Canada. Good morning for us to everybody. I'm going to start by talking about um, leadership and leisure services in TR, a course that Sean and I co-teach. Um, what makes that unique in our program and at our university is that in addition to the 12-week semester, we take the students off campus for a mandatory 72-hour retreat where we focus on experiential learning and create an environment where there's lots of peer-to-peer learning and the students have lots of perceptions of freedom in that process. So in addition to the core concepts that we want them to learn. There's also things that we can't anticipate that are going to happen because each cohort of students has different likes and different dislikes. And so we give space for those types of natural processes to happen. One of the benefit of that is that we've broken down the traditional peer to student relationships. And a simple example is how many of you have sat down and had a meal with your undergraduate students? Well, here we have breakfast together at 7:30 in the morning and lunch together at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and dinner together at 6 or 6:30 in the evening. And the topics around the table are, whatever the students bring up and what the discussion is. And we share in those discussions and we sit amongst the students and with the students. And that really creates a dynamic that breaks down the traditional roles and helps students feel comfortable and take risks in the learning environment. The other thing that we have done serendipitously is we use models that we teach the students, but we use those same models as underpinnings for how the course is designed. So we use, Kolb's learning cycle and teach that to the students, but we also bring the students through that cycle. We teach Lindenberg and Garcia's 5 design principles, and we use those to create authentic learning experiences for the students. And we use Tuckman's 5 stages of group development, and we teach that concept of the 5 stages, and then we ask the students to identify where they are along that continuum at different times throughout the semester. So not only are they learning concepts, but they're able to apply concepts in real situations. I think the success is the peer-to-peer learning. It's the de-emphasize of the traditional professor-student relationship. And it's the perceived freedom that students have to pick and choose what's most important to them so that the learning is authentic. And I would say that those are our successes. And Sean can fill in anything that I've left off the table.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think it's amazing. I just want to add that taking students out of their element and bringing them into a new environment with their peers, I think is the most uniting and the most engaging, right, you can be. So thank you.
Well, we'll talk about the challenges later.
So, hello everyone. Thank you for joining. I have the pleasure of taking part in a couple of different experiential learning activities with students. My colleague just covered one of them, but the one I'm going to speak about today is my partnership with McGill University in the PALS Physical Activity and Leisure Skills program. So this is housed in the CHAMPS lab, the Choices in Health, Action, Motivation, Pedagogy, and Skill lab out of McGill, and in partnership with us here at Concordia. So essentially, undergraduate students in physical education and adapted physical activity partner with our graduate students in recreation and leisure to provide physical activity and leisure skills and social skills to children with ADHD and their families. So every Saturday morning, children with ADHD and their families come into our program. The children go into the gymnasium and they learn about physical activity and social skills with physical educators and adapted physical activity specialists. At the same time, the parents are learning from our recreation and leisure specialists through leisure education and engagement in various leisure activities. So we have both the parts of the program running simultaneously. This has been an opportunity to work with children and their families to enhance their leisure well-being and to enhance their leisure education and as well as their physical activity and social skill sets. What I think makes the program most successful is we have the opportunity to address a real need in the community. There's a dearth of services for children with ADHD and their families, particularly within the context of social skill and leisure development. So that's been a real success of the program, and we're doing that outside of traditional hours. So we're doing that on the weekend, which allows and affords families the opportunity to join. There's no cost associated, so that's been an opportunity to bring down some of the barriers for parents and for children. It also allows undergraduates, graduate students from different disciplines to work together in the experience, which is modeling what really happens in the real world when we go out and we start to work with other disciplines within the context of care. It's also afforded the opportunity, which I think has been successful, for students to then take that mentality of service learning, experiential education, and then to branch off into other types of work that they're doing and make an impact in that way. So my graduate student Hannah's sitting in on the call today, and she's involved in both the 361 project and the PALS project, and it's been an opportunity for her to learn in real time about how this happens in the context of community when working with community partners. So that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love the engagement of parents. I think that that's, to me personally, is one of the biggest important pieces to educate parents, right? Because so much of child development helps kind of happens in the family environment. Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Aileen, we're gonna let you go next. If you could share your few minutes of introducing your project and also the successes of it.
Great, thank you. Good morning, bonjour. It's a real pleasure to be here and to listen to the other panelists and meet all those who are participating here this morning. I'm at the University of Ottawa. It's a bilingual research university, and we have a community service learning office. And so that, from the start has really shaped our participation and our ability to place a large number of students. So I've been, taking part as a professor collaborating with it's changed names. The center, it's linked with co-op and career and just service learning and international experience. And I've placed probably 800 students with 40 different partners. And so I've done both the whole class. So it's a class-wide project. And most recently in the last year, I've done it with one resettlement organization and another one with Sport Hall of Fame. And in previous years, I've done placements with the campus leisure and recreation services, and also placements in classes where we only have about 10%, and those 10% of the students can take part, and those are managed by the Community Service Learning Office. The class-based projects are managed by myself with the help of a teaching assistant who acts, as a liaison with the community partner. In terms of, I think, why it's been successful is the need is there. There's been a number of cutbacks and, opportunities for students to gain this experience and really provide support to the community in how they're building. So we take an asset-based community approach. And so we look to hear from the community about where they'd like to build their strengths and on what assets. And then we collaborate with the students to help shape different projects. In those projects, the ones I can speak to in the last year, we've had, for example, the resettlement service provider, through an interest survey of those who avail of the service, they indicated that newcomers to Ottawa don't know where to start or how to find information about leisure. And so the students together we did an interest survey, and then we identified 14 areas of leisure that they would like more information on or how to start. And the students created how-to videos and PowerPoints, and they really broke it down to, how to get off the bus, and they did the walks themselves, so that anyone, because this is primarily targeted for older women, and so we were very conscious of signposts and lighting and so forth. And they created these videos. They've been shared with the community partner who posted them, and now we're going to do an evaluation of their use and and how they feel watching the videos, and did it induce them to take part in more activities. Another reason I think it's been successful is because it's been hard for some students to get any jobs right now, any part-time jobs. They have a very full academic workload. Many of them are student athletes in our program in human kinetics. They also do volunteering, and they do either an internship or a research-based fourth-year project. And so it's been hard to take on additional work in an area that they'd like to get experience in. So for many, this is like a tester. They can sample what it would be like to work in a retirement home, for example, or a school setting, and they get that experience in their first and second year through this 30-hour placement. I think also choice. I think a recurring theme we hear is, giving students the opportunity to choose. Do they want to do an individual project, work with people they know, group together by interest for, what they're working on, their ideas to shape it. And so I'm also very open, and, I was really intrigued by the creative ideas that my colleagues have talked about so far in terms of letting students sort of drive how they want to create the placement, and then how we would assess that in terms of their reflection and their impact. um and then I do little things like we normally the community service learning office doesn't credit transportation or preparation time. It's 30 hours at the placement or working on the placement. And I calculate the hours because Ottawa is a very extended city, and it could take an hour to commute, an hour back. And, that impacts whether they're going to do the placement and how they feel about the placement. And so I calculate things like, their time that they did to prepare, to train, and so forth. And lastly, I think for us at the university, it's the community service learning office is a huge reason for the success. I mean, they're absolutely passionate. They've fostered excellent connections in the community. They really follow through. They're supportive for the students in terms of all the administrative aspects. They come to the class, they work with the partner, and that's greatly facilitated, in my opinion, placements that we do. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love this connection to the community, since a lot of times I think university is seen as kind of this bubble of outsiders in the community, right? And so that connection between students and kind of members of the community is so huge. That's so important for the university, not just for the student. Awesome. I see also Stephen shared information about some publications. Please, all the speakers, feel free to share any additional resources, whether published by you or something that maybe you heavily relied on, books you're using, just to add some additional resource to our panel, to our audience. All right, thank you so much. So we have Mona left to introduce her project and share her success story.
Well, hello everybody. Thanks again for attending this webinar today. I'm here at IU Indianapolis, and basically experiential learning activities are part of the fabric of our program. We're very industry oriented, and we start from the very beginning of a student's education, getting them involved in the industry, sending them out to volunteer, to interview, or in one way or another get involved with the industry. But what I would like to talk about today is what I call my signature work. This is the course that I designed from scratch and organized throughout the year, and it was offered last summer. It's called Tourism, Event, and Sports Management, which is our department's name, behind the scenes. It's a 3-credit course, and what I did was that I realized that actually in my other classes that while volunteering, internships, field work, some type of service activities, a great start for the students, it didn't give them the depth of the knowledge that I expected. And most of them went out based on what is available, of course, not what their actual interest was. It's difficult to find find a match for what you are actually interested in. So what I did was I created relationships with our industry partners. We went in 6 weeks of summer. We went to 6 different sites, and we stayed at each site for 6 hours, basically a full day. Like I said, I designed and organized the course, but during our visits, I basically took the back seat. Everything was in the hand of our industry partners. So during these 6 hours, I asked them to give them an opportunity to interact with the key personnel from different departments, and they talk to them about what their day-to-day work life looks like, what are their challenges, what are their success stories, so on and so forth. And then in each of the visits, we had some type of hands-on activity, which was a part of. It wasn't like the task that they usually complete in a volunteer opportunity, but it was more of a real task, whatever they were working on that particular day. And well, like I said, we visited 6 key establishments in a sport, two in sports, one in events, one in hospitality, and one in tourism, and then another one was a tourism attraction. And at the end, how I assessed the success of the course was basically, well, first success was having a full load. This was a summer course. It was new. And well, in my description of the course, from the beginning, I was intentional about not including any exam, any homework, no classroom lecture. They get enough of that in other classes. So this was all about going out and experiencing things in real life. So that kind of make it, because it was new, it made it, I feel like, a little vague, unfamiliar for the students. So getting enough enrollment to run the class was the first success, which I did get a full load. I'm happy about that. And then one of my objectives was to, like I said, give them a full understanding of different sectors of the industry. And I asked after each visit, students wrote a one-page reflection paper, and I kept that open. Just reflect on your experience, talk to me about the parts that was most enjoyable to you. What were the 3 main lessons that you learned from this visit? Didn't try to guide their mind into anything, but they specifically mentioned that I learned so much. I gained so much like deeper knowledge that compared to what I would get in other opportunities or in the classroom. I did want them to see the connection between tourism, event, sport, and hospitality. We do talk to them extensively in all classes, how they are interdependent, interconnected, but going out and having our industry people talking to them about their collaborative projects, how they all know each other in downtown Indianapolis and how they get together when there is a crisis situation like a pandemic, that was a completely different situation that gave them a way more tangible understanding of what is happening. I also wanted them to kind of broaden their view of their career paths, because some of them have some idea of what they are going to do in the future, but having these visits kind of opened their eyes in all other potential career paths, and they clearly mentioned that in their reflection papers. I think I'm going over time, so I'm going to stop here and ask questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mona, for sharing. I really love the part where you're saying, the hearing it from professionals a lot of times gives so much more credibility. I think a lot of times students see their professors as their parents, kind of just, nagging them. But hearing that from professional just adds that credibility to our words as well and what we teach them in classes. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. So our next question is, identify remaining challenge in your experiential learning offering and possibly talk us through, right, some of the examples of issues that maybe you were able or unable to resolve, and maybe just having some hopefully feedback from the audience on potentially how other people resolve that in their past. So just 1-2 minutes on challenges, and then we'll see if we have any questions from the audience. Audience, please feel free to chip in on the chat and provide some suggestions for our speakers as well. And we'll go in the same order with Hazel starting it.
All right, thank you. And it was interesting hearing the themes across the speakers, particularly about this real life, real world experience, which was a really key part of our applied projects as well, and really motivated the students that it was real and meaningful to them. I guess that sort of leads to one of the challenges because of the choice of topics and the type of activities and projects that people could choose. And really breaking down those projects into stages and how the students were going to tackle them at each stage of the research. And I think one of the challenges for me was providing enough feedback for the students, particularly in the early stages, about what was realistic and was not, because often when they're doing these really exciting, creative projects, that they understanding what's actually achievable in the time in the across the 15 weeks. So, but giving them enough feedback when they need it and encouraging them to really come and ask questions so they don't go down a rabbit hole or just go off in the wrong direction. So that sort of whole, how do you provide feedback both individually and in groups as students need it along the process is a challenge. Thanks.
Thank you. I can imagine that in such a very flexible environment, it is challenging to do that. Thank you for sharing. Sean and Stephen?
I was asked in the discussion board about how we fund off-campus retreat. And our university has a mechanism for a student fee levy for a specific course with a specific reason. So when they register for the course, they're charged, I think it's an extra $80 or $90 to participate in the residential retreat. That money obviously goes to the facility that we rent, where we're charged by student by the night for being there. But that's not the end of it, because we also ask the students to put money into a small group pool so that they can buy the food and prepare a meal for everyone else in class. And they only have to do that once for the weekend, and all their other 5 meals are paid for by the other groups. But that does create another financial barrier. And the third financial barrier, there's two more. The third financial barrier is we don't have transportation. So we asked the students to organize carpools. And so far, we've been very successful with that, although we've been sweating a little bit from time to time about getting everyone up to the camp in a reliable, safe car. And we've dealt with some headaches around that. The fourth financial hardship is that Sean and I get half university teaching credits, even though we're doing this 100% of the time. And so, bringing the university up to speed about the requirements for being involved in experiential learning, where you can't be half there, but there is a risk management needing two professors there. And so if something happens, if one of us has to take a student back to the city, if we have to go to the hospital, we need another person to stay at the camp with the rest of the students and continue the curriculum. And so, but we don't have full university support, but the university does have a structure where we can co-teach a course. So there's positives and negatives.
Just to add on, I agree with everything Stephen said. Just to add on, it's sometimes hard to get them to leave at the end of the weekend too, because they've had a great time. But that's neither here nor there. In the PALS project, the project isn't housed within a traditional course. So some students come to us through an independent study course, some students come through us through their graduate work, some students come through us through volunteering, and others through a paid opportunity. So funding is obviously an issue and a challenge. Presently, the project is funded by Head to Core Foundation here in Montreal, but funding is year to year based on results, which is the second type of challenge is in capturing those results. So when asking for many groups in the community, particularly kids with ADHD and their families, to be involved in a project is one thing, to donate time to the project and then to a research study is another level of commitment. And they're often asked to do that with a lot of the interventions that take part in. So that piece of the data is important in collecting to see what outcome and benefit we're having for the community. And the challenge around collecting data within the context of what the students are getting out of it. So some of them are able to report what they're getting out of it through anecdotal conversation with us. Others who come to us with those course requirements elaborate in the course content or the coursework. But to capture that has been a challenge as well. So I think really for that particular project, it's where funding and research collide with the teaching and learning. And that's been a challenge. We've navigated that by successfully taking part in community-based fundraising events. We just took part in a run walk event in September to raise funds. We find unique ways to bring students into the fold to address some of those outcome measures that we want. And we have students who are actively researching those components into the future now to see what some of those benefits for the students are. So that's been the biggest challenge for us.
Fundraising in itself can be experiential learning, right? Example. So absolutely, very good example. Thank you. And Aileen, do you want to share your challenges and how you addressed or didn't address them again?
Okay. I think the challenge is clarity, that we set reasonable expectations with the community partners, and that the expectations and the tasks are clearly communicated to the students. Now, a lot of the placements, there isn't a clearly defined task. It will depend on the initiatives of the students. It will depend on interests as as they flow throughout the 12 weeks. And so it's allowing for flexibility and ensuring that students are prepared to do a placement, that it's not as structured as they may prefer. So it's working outside of their comfort zone a little bit. And on that, I think that, we need to talk about training and supervision and, what is the chain of command to go to when there's an issue. And so making sure that we're in close communication with the community partner and that we're on the same wavelength with regard to that. I think that there's a level of training that needs to be done for our students and the partners to ensure it's an inclusive, anti-racist, and very welcoming setting, both that our students are prepared for that as well as the partner. And so we want to make sure that we mitigate any issues that arise or that could impact the well-being of our students or the partners that they're working with. And then lastly, I would say in terms of workload, and my colleagues at Concordia touched on that. This isn't recognized. We're given workloads, 3 credits, 1.5, or so forth. And so what you do with the course is your own business, and in that sense. And so this takes a lot of hours to do it well. Even if you're doing a class based, there's just 150 students that are sending emails, and then you have community partners and things. Whereas the TAs can't necessarily, do a lot of that because they're really trained to do grading and help in class and that kind of thing. And so it's understanding what's feasible for your workload, that it would be beneficial if there was a little bit more recognition in terms of the time that it takes to ensure that it's a meaningful and engaged experience.
You are absolutely right. I mean, it's first, I think the workload that's absolutely insane. When you build a relationship, it takes years sometimes, right, to find the right partners and build relationship with those partners and then train them and all of that. So I absolutely agree that that's very, very challenging undertaking. And for somebody who's maybe new to community, right, or just starting their career, that might be just absolutely not an option, or an option that will take over all of the time. So definitely use that resource, right, wisely. And hopefully universities are going to become more supportive, right, knowing and understanding how important and valuable experiential learning is. And of course, the class sizes, right? We are all trying to increase class sizes and minimize, right, the necessarily support of the TAs and such. So it's definitely, there's a lot of challenges just administratively. All right, Mona, would you like to share your challenges?
Of course. So the first challenge I would say, building these relationships and initial planning and scheduling was not easy. We are those who have been in Indianapolis know that our downtown has been intentionally designed and built as a sport event and tourism center. So we heavily rely on those industries for our economic vibrancy. Each of these entities that we visited, they were fast-paced and they are overwhelmingly busy at points. So getting a hold of them in the first place and asking them to give us a full day with all of their key personnel, that was the first challenge. But Well, we do also have long-term partnerships with some of these establishments, so that helped me a little bit. But still, it wasn't easy to do to pull everything together. And the second one, I guess, would be sustainability of the course. Again, these entities are overwhelmingly busy. They all have a packed schedule, and each of the events that they bring to the city at a minimum is worth thousands of dollars. Some are $1 million events. And here I am showing up with 10 students on a thank you card and asking for a full day and their entire staff to, work with us. So, and we're not paying them. If there was a way, I feel like if there was a way, they were graceful and they went above and beyond what I expected. I was pleasantly surprised. And the students really, really appreciated and enjoyed the experience. But if there was a way to maybe turn these into paid partnerships, I think that would help with sustaining the class in the long term. For now, we are again offering it this summer. But like I said, turning it into a sustained long-term class is another challenge, and funding would definitely help.
I can completely relate to that. I think that many of these organizations want to help and want to share and want our students as their future employee, right, or volunteers. So that's great collaboration. But I would agree that when you do some collaboration year after year after year, it can get partners pretty exhausted, especially when you require kind of a lot of them in these busy organizations, as you said, Mon. Thank you so much. Great, awesome. I wanted to see if there are any questions in the audience. Is there any questions that people been focused on? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask them.
Well, I had a question, but that was already answered on the chat by Stephen, which I already thank him for the sharing the methods and the theory supporting his course. So and also some of the things which you're facing in your countries is a little different in Europe and specifically in Portugal. Because most of us from public service university, so most of it is already has the funding, so we don't need to find funding for that because it's supported by the university. Even though a few more specific examples sometimes will be helpful to try to get from a visual point of view, even though I have a lot of notes here to digest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? So I see, what are the challenges that you faced in evaluating student learning? That's a great question. I think that can be a lot of times a dilemma, right? Because a lot of very successful students in our classes really want that very structured list of how am I going to be successful. I know that I was that A student who really needed clear structure. And so many students are very uncomfortable with lack of maybe clarity. And so how did you face that kind of evaluation process? How did you address that?
Can I add to that before they address the answers? I had a question how it fit into when they're working in groups and identifying the individual grades that come away from groups. So it sort of fits the package together, but if there's any thoughts on that, thank you.
Thanks.
I can start with Heather's question. Hi, Heather. Um, uh, it's not a grade that stands by itself. So in one component from a group process, they're working together for the first part of the assignment, but then the second part of the assignment is an individual paper. And so they are, unless there's a catastrophe, they're sharing the first part of the grade together because they're a group. But then and then may not be successful, but the assignment could be still successful because in the reflection in the paper part, they can account for the mistakes they can make. They could account for the group dynamic problems that they encountered. And as a leader and as a follower, what would they have done differently next time they're in that situation? It's the reflective part of going around Kolb's learning cycle. And then, hopefully that the next time they're in that situation, they reflect on what happened now, and then they learn from that. So we try not to put 100% of the grade into a group dynamic. There's a balance throughout the course.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
I can just add on to that and also say that listening to student feedback about their experiences in creating and writing the assignments, and then how those can be adapted to better understand the learning that they're going through, and then using a range of assessments within a course. So for the course that Stephen and I teach together, we have a professionalism component, which details in clear outline how various levels of professionalism are determined within the context of the course. We have a presentation component, we have a written component, we have an examination component. So it's providing multiple ways to assess, gathering, if you will, multiple data points across the course, and then using those to look at the overall assessment of the student. Within the context of the Saturday morning program, the learning is more understood or evaluated through the debrief that we engage in, either with our own students or as a larger group, and what students are learning within those interactions with the children or with the parents. For the ones that are tied to the program with the courses, it's more about the reflective piece, the cold reflective piece that's used within those assignments when they take it away. And then with some of the assignments, an understanding of how to implement that in the future.
If I could add, I do really the similar things, multiple types of assignments, and it is extremely difficult. There are a lot of students who are very concerned about a group mark and it's impacting, their overall grade and their ambitions for, graduate school or so forth. And so, what I did, and it seemed to work reasonably well, is if it's out of 30, the community service learning component in the course, then I give 5%, marked out of 5 for the presentation, which is a group. And in that group presentation, before they do the group presentation, I like to see the reflection papers where they match their, the core competencies and skills. If we, go to the Conference Board of Canada or whatever we're looking at, and they have to explain how they did or didn't acquire that experience and the reflection on that. They also have to submit like a tool, so something that they took part in specifically. So, for example, the groups that worked on campus, we had like 100 students, so we had 15 groups. One of them did the aquatic pool, and they redesigned the pool to a wave pool and a lazy river. And then, so within that, you had students that were, you know, like doing pricing for bathing suits to be sold. So they would submit their individual little project and talk about the skills they learned. Then when they presented, I asked questions. It was, fast and furious. And I was very fortunate to have excellent TAs so we could listen, and it was recorded, but we made sure it was them and it wasn't AI that just wrote the reflection paper really quickly, because that can happen too. And so we could probe a little bit further, but our classes are like 150, 180, 100, 200 students. So you can't, it's really kind of one question per student during that presentation, but it seemed to work okay.
Thank you all for sharing. I will share my example. So in one of my classes, I do group projects, and they actually, in the end of the class, 10% of their grade, I believe it's 10%, depends on their evaluation of each other. And so they all complete a form in the end where they provide feedback on how engaged you are, how helpful you are, how leadership roles, and so on and so on. So it was really helpful because that removed responsibility from me to get into the depth of these interactions. If I had to, I would, but it really helped them to kind of try to ensure that they are part of the team, even if they maybe weren't as committed as other students. They at least tried to make sure that the perception was there, which is kind of reflective on real world situation, right? And peer evaluation. So I was wondering, go ahead, Mona.
I was going to add something if you have time.
Yes, I actually wanted to address you next, since you said that you didn't have very formal kind of structure. I was wondering how you evaluated your students and their success.
Well, the course overall was pass or fail. So as long as they attended and they were engaged throughout the course, because like I said, it was a summer course, no textbook, no classroom lecture, and no exam, no homework. But in a reflection paper, I use the reflection papers as both formative and summative assessment. And part of the reflection paper was to outline the main lessons that they learned at each of those establishments. And that was one way of my assessment. We also had pop quizzes or pop questions throughout the visits. And what was very interesting to me was how they stayed engaged and focused for 6 hours. Because it was even difficult for me to focus for that long. And I'm not gonna lie to you. And sometimes, first, they answered all the questions correctly, interestingly. And second, sometimes they mentioned things that I was like, oh, I didn't catch that, but they did. And so that was an interesting thing that I learned.
Awesome, amazing. I appreciate that. Hazel, if you have anything to add to that.
Only that sometimes we try a bit to be a bit more innovative in terms of the evaluation, whether the students want to be evaluated as a group or individually, and give them that choice. And that can be quite an interesting way to break it down. But otherwise, most of what has been said. Thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. So I have a couple of questions here in the chat. I'm not very sure about the question about, can permanent faculty share their assessment methods for part-time faculty? So maybe the person can elaborate on what they mean by that. But I really also want to address the AI question and how that can be or cannot be used in experiential learning. And if any of you applied, these tools and techniques for your classes of experiential learning.
We can clarify the questions. We're a big group listening to the thing right now, so we're gonna have the mic open.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sayeda. I'm a part-time faculty. This is my second semester at the Applied Human Sciences, and I'm learning about these wonderful evaluation and assessment methods. And I'm also concerned because of the generative AI and how this is, kind of functioning when it comes to students' assessments. I was thinking, since some of you guys have wonderful and innovative assessment methods, would it be possible to have them in one place, and we part-time and new faculty members could use it as a resource when we are designing our course outlines, because this helps a lot to learn from methods that have been used and tested. So that was my question. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Would any panelist would like to answer either one of those questions?
Well, I did throw yes. I'm happy to share. I can compile them for different courses in English and in French, and send them, I guess, to you. And then you post them. In terms of the AI, I mean, that's it. Like, we asked them to be really specific, but we also asked them to remember ethics. Like, they can't upload really personal information that they may have observed or gained from their placements, like in an after-school children's program, where people can be identified. We teach them that they can't post things on social media about what they're doing. These are confidential placements with vulnerable sectors usually. What I'm seeing is, normally when I have a large class and I say, okay, we have 20 placements, so only 10% of the class can do a placement. It's in replacement of an essay or critical review paper. So normally there was a lineup, like, to get the placement, but now that they can do this, essay in 10 minutes on AI, and it's up to us to really determine if it's AI, and then we have to go through a lot of tools and before we can say that it's plagiarism, then you're seeing that this is really 30 hours plus prep plus transportation versus doing something they can do on their own, at home, remotely, a paper. So when we do it then a whole class, then it kind of takes away that that problem, and that everyone will be doing a placement. But we just try to make it really specific. They have to really specifically give me an example in their reflection, or draw it, or like, with the same things. It could be an infographic or whatever, but it's something specific.
Awesome. We only have just probably time for one more person to share their experiences. Is anybody else had any thoughts about AI and any experiences with that?
Mine is not about AI, but I do have a recommendation. If anybody is interested in creating a course similar to mine, I do not recommend adding anything more than the reflection papers. The reflection papers were great in both helping me assess their learning and improving the course, and I think it was just enough, because we jumped from the spring semester right to the summer, and each of these visits, like I said, was 6 hours. 6 hours we were not sitting in one place. We were walking around the big stadium and listening constantly. 6 hours of listening as you are moving. And we went to a big convention center. We went to the basement. We went up on the roof. Again, 6 hours. Like, the class was on Wednesday. Every Thursday, I was like, I need a break. So I would say adding any type of any big reading materials or exams or homework would be definitely an overload. I do not recommend that to anybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, just in literally 30 seconds or less, one advice that our panelists would provide to somebody who is willing or wanting to start, develop class with experiential learning component. Anything that maybe worked for you, or anything that you feel like this is the biggest takeaway kind of from the webinar. If you could do that in the same order, we'll say Hazel, Stephen and Sean, Aileen, and Mona.
I think it's really great at the beginning if you can give students like loads of examples of successful projects and strategies, and like, for example, like you mentioned, like with the raps and the videos that they've made, so they can see some of the really successful projects that come out of it. And also maybe at the beginning discussing with the students, yes, these fantastic things and these are the learnings you can have, but what are the pitfalls and problems? And then being able to support students as they go through the journey. Thank you.
I think it's creates a safe learning environment when I tell my students I'm also going through experiential learning. And every time I teach the course, it's a different group of students with a different dynamic, and I have to respond appropriately. So I'm in experiential learning, and I would extrapolate that to AI. I think all of us were probably teaching before AI became a thing. And so this is experiential teaching for all of us. How do we incorporate AI into our teaching, into our repertoire? What do we tell our students about it? What's acceptable? What's not acceptable? And so we're going through the process at the same time as our students are. And I think it's safe to share that level of vulnerability with our learners.
If you're prepared to take on this type of work, I would say it's not easy. Stay the course, be prepared to deal with failure. But the successes in the outcomes of this type of learning for yourself and your students heavily outweigh the but it's not easy.
I would, absolutely agree with everything that's just been said, and I would add to tap into resources on campus. So if there's, professors that are doing internships in our faculty, it's health sciences, so it's well recognized, the importance of doing placements and, working in different healthcare and sports settings. And so really talk to those professors that have been doing it. And I would start small. I would not start if you're first time doing a large class size. It's just start small with a trusted partner or two that, that office or your colleague has said, they're very good, and this will be a good introductory experience.
Is it my turn? Okay. I have to actually first keep the class small, aligns with what Heather said, so students get individual attention and they get an opportunity to actually interact with the partners. It doesn't, you wouldn't want it to turn into just another site visit with a big group of people walking around the big site. And also be ready for surprises, but try to minimize those. Like I said, our partners were in charge during the visits, and while I had clarified everything in advance, when we got to one of the sites, we realized that they could not have an activity for the students because they are labor union institutions. So yeah, even though well, it was out of my control, but just be prepared. You may be surprised by things like that, but try to clarify everything in advance and minimize those surprises.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really want to thank all of our panelists for amazing experiences, knowledge, information you all shared. We really appreciate your time. Hazel, please get some rest. Thank you all so much for participating. Everybody from the audience, you were amazing too. Thank you for your participation and engagement. We'll share information about other webinars as we plan them, and hopefully to see you back with us soon. And thank you. Enjoy everybody's day, night, wherever you are. And yeah, we'll share information about the link to the video. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.